There he is.
What about Commissioner Kent?
Chair Giles, the meeting is now live.
We are missing Chair Kent. We are missing Commissioner Kent, but we do have a quorum. So I propose to proceed. We have a long agenda and we have people waiting on the line, and we don't want to keep them waiting any longer than we have to. For those who can see and hear me, I'm Gavin Giles. I'm the chair of the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners. I'm pleased to call this meeting to order. I confirm with Madam Chair that we have, with Madam Clerk, that we have a quorum. Mi'kma'ki Land Acknowledgement. The Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Again, for the benefit of those who are joining us online, I'm going to do a roll call. Commissioner O'Malley. Present, also Vice Chair. Commissioner Kent, I think we're still waiting for Commissioner Kent to join us. Commissioner Mancini, we saw him.
Yeah, present, Mr. Chair. Hello, everybody.
Commissioner Hinch, we saw her. She's present.
Present.
And Commissioner Akindoju is present.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, do we have any community announcements?
Chair, there's no community announcements from the clerk's office, but those normally come from commissioners, so you can ask if they have any that they wish to share.
Do any of the commissioners have community announcements that they wish to share?
None for me.
Thank you. We do have a housekeeping item which relates to the minutes from our December 18th, 2024 meeting. They were not dealt with on Monday because that was a special meeting for a special purpose. I call for the approval of the December 18th, 2024 minutes. Can I have a mover, please?
I can move it. Virginia.
So we have Vice Chair O'Malley moved and Commissioner Hinch seconded. Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Hearing none, I call for the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raise your hand. Contrary minded, nay.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Clerk, the minutes are carried.
Thank you, Chair Giles.
Next item on the agenda, the approval of the order of business and the approval of additions and deletions from the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda?
Chair Giles, there are no additions or deletions from the clerk's office this afternoon.
Commissioners, are there any additions or deletions from the agenda that you wish to raise yourselves?
Chair, I'd just like to acknowledge that I do have another meeting to go to, so I have to depart at 6 o'clock. So I don't know what that does to our quorum at that point in time, but hopefully Commissioner Kent comes in at that time.
Thank you, Commissioner. We should be fine, and we should be able to cover a lot of territory between now and 6 o'clock, but thank you for the heads up.
Okay, thank you.
The agenda requires a mover and a seconder. Is somebody prepared to move the agenda?
So moved by Commissioner Mancini.
Thank you. And seconded by Commissioner Akindoju. Thank you. All those in favor of the agenda?
Aye.
Thank you. Are there any contrary minded? Are there any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Madam Clerk, is there business arising out of the minutes?
No, Chair, there isn't.
I will now ask if anyone has a conflict of interest to declare as a result of an item on today's agenda. This applies to the commissioners themselves and not to the guests who are joining us online. Thank you. Hearing none. Madam Clerk, is there any deferred business?
No, Chair Giles.
And is there any correspondence or are there any petitions and delegations?
Chair Giles, I can confirm that correspondence was received and circulated for item 10.1.1.
Yes, those were the three items, the last of which was provided just a little while ago.
That is correct.
Are there any petitions?
No petitions from the clerk's office for this meeting.
And are there any presentations other than the ones from those who have registered to submit?
No presentation.
Is there any information to be brought forward?
No.
In agenda item 10, we have received and have considered, at least to some extent, the reports of the Halifax Regional Police with respect to the 2025 and 2026 proposed operating budget, and from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Halifax Regional Detachment, its 2025 and 2026 resource budget request. We have next, for public consultation on both the HRP portion of the budget and the RCMP Halifax Regional Detachment portion of the budget, the presentations. Public input into the policing budgetary process is an important aspect of what we, as the Halifax Board of Police Commissioners, do. And we first and foremost want to thank the registered speakers for their time and interest in relation to this important process. Whilst we cannot guarantee that all public input will be assimilated into the budget we ultimately put before the Halifax Regional Council for approval, we can say that all legitimate views of the public will be considered. Against that backdrop, we ask our speakers to respect some very basic ground rules for their respective participations. We require that the speakers stay within their 5-minute speaking windows. We will give a 30-second warning at the end of 5 minutes. Time will be called. We ask that speakers be respectful and that they restrict their comments to the current budgetary issues. This is not an opportunity to trash the police, other agencies, or other speakers whose views diverge with the views of others, or in which to raise other social justice issues. Our intentions are to permit speakers their full 5 minutes without interruption, but commissioners may have questions at the ends of the various 5-minute submissions. Speakers who routinely wear masks must remove them when they are speaking, the only exceptions being those speakers who wear masks for medical reasons and who, for whatever reasons, are speaking to us from public as opposed to private spaces. Speakers are entitled to supplement their verbal submissions with up to 2 PowerPoint type slides, but only so long as those 2 slides have been provided to the clerk's office in advance. Just as this is not an opportunity to trash the police, other agencies, or other speakers whose views diverge with the views of others, it is also not an opportunity for speakers to engage with us on their own personal interactions with the police. There are channels for that form of interaction, but this session is not one of them. The intention is that speakers will provide us with their own thoughts and not the thoughts of others, be they identified or not identified. Madam Clerk, do we have instructions for those who are attending with respect to their use of microphones?
Yes, we do, Chair. So I would just like to let all of the speakers that are in today's Zoom meeting to know that when it's close to your turn to speak, staff will promote you in Zoom to allow you to turn your mic and camera on. You'll leave the Zoom meeting briefly when this happens, and then you'll reconnect with your controls available to your mic and to your camera. Please leave your mic muted until the chair calls your name. And I would also like to ask that the people that are in the meeting as attendees, if you can please name yourself using the name that you use to register to speak, so that we will be able to promote you when it's your time to speak. Thank you very much. You can continue there with calling for the first speakers.
Thank you. Can we start with Curtis Watson, please? Is Mr. Watson on the line?
Yes, Cherry, as he's just being promoted now.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Watson, good evening. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So I'll keep this extremely short and sweet. I've lived in Halifax now for about 7 years. I would say my main concern with regards to policing and enforcement is regards to road safety. Since I've lived here, I've actually been hit by a car while biking and also walking on a sidewalk. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that it's a problem given the deaths that have occurred recently. But yeah, that is really the main concern I wanted to raise in terms of how policing is allocated. I think it's a big gap with regards to reckless and careless driving.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, does anybody have any questions for Mr. Watson?
If I
Thank
may,
you,
Mr.
Mr. Watson.
Chair,
Oh,
if I may,
sorry.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Watson, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Watson, I'm sorry to hear that you've had that experience. Have you spoken to your area councillor about your incidents?
With regards to the bike accident, it was actually kind of serious. So I did in that case, but yeah, nothing ended up being pursued just because the person that hit me fled the scene afterwards.
Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Watson, that happened to you. Thank you very much for sharing that story and your concern.
Other commissioners' questions for Mr. Watson? Thank you, Mr. Watson.
Appreciate it. Thank you for
The
your
next
time.
speaker is Kay MacDonald.
Can folks hear me?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. As mentioned, my name is Kay McDonald. I feel like everybody already knows that already. I am an African Nova Scotian Acadian queer trans non-binary community member that was born and raised in Jibuktuk, Mi'kma'ki. Firstly, the preamble about trashing the police and not talking about our personal experiences was like really weird. I feel like Gavin Giles, you have actually said that we gave banal and canned presentations that were bizarre and rubbish designed to titillate and annoy. I just am bored of the narrative that we come to these repressive meetings and that we're the people that act out or don't play by the rules. Watching the Halifax Regional Police budget climb over the years without any increase in tangible examples of improved safety or demonstrated success of policing is beyond frustrating. We have now reached a police budget of over $100 million, and I can't believe I'm actually saying that out loud because it sounds like a fake number. My disbelief comes from seeing thousands of people within the city and province not having access to adequate healthcare or family doctor. Maybe it's because the average rent in Halifax in 2024 was $2,373, and there are over 1,300 people who are on the by name list. These numbers directly related to 65% of Nova Scotians who've experienced a housing challenge in the past year. Intimate partner violence is becoming a rising epidemic in this city, and municipal library workers went on strike this year demanding frontline recognition, support, and expert pay that they actually deserve. It feels simply unruly that HRP is trying to move the needle to amass over $100 million. This is but a small list of what is currently happening in the city and province as well, though I realize that the Board of Police Commissioners is a civilian governance and oversight board for municipal policing reasons. The municipal realities impact the province, and the less we name that, the easier it is for bureaucratic systems to bounce our concerns back and forth without getting to the root cause of issue or taking accountability. I feel like the math is pretty clear, that more money to policing means less money to municipal community supports that are actually invested in improving the quality of life of those most forcibly marginalized and affected by these intersecting crises. I mean, I'm not going to share back a ton of stats because I just feel like I don't want to and didn't want to spend like hours preparing for this meeting when I don't feel like the police spend hours preparing their budget presentations. Anyways, so I'm not going to contribute to the power differentiation that grows by engaging in that way. The wildest thing to me actually is that there is enough money and there truly is another way forward. I don't have a ton of like new thoughts, but I do have a few questions. Does more money mean better policing? If yes, please direct me to the research that indicates this. From what I understand, policing, the Halifax Regional Police are naming a new proactive approach, and the Board of Police Commissioners is considering greenlighting this idea. Police being more proactive, to me, reads as aggressively interacting with the public. I'm just wondering why this has been considered a good idea. Does more money to police mean a safer city? If yes, please direct me to the research that indicates this. What are armored vehicles for? We didn't want one, now we have 3, and apparently this is an urgent need, and I'm actually lost. What are these vehicles urgently needed for? I've been watching for at least a year various types of armored vehicles be utilized around the world, and never once have I seen them used to protect people. I believe them to be a weapon of military nature, and I don't think we need them. If I'm mistaken or I'm missing another use for armored vehicles, I'd welcome that. I'd welcome that information. But I'm not going to ignore the fact that this seems like a weird ploy at desensitization to the militarization of our surroundings and city. Armored vehicles aren't normal. I don't want to see them in my neighborhoods or in community spaces. What is your dream for the city? I ask this because I know mine, and I feel pretty clear on what I hope for. And more, it seems like the vision for Halifax is only for a handful of people that are already benefiting. Please correct me if I'm wrong. What do you all believe the future of policing is, especially when overfunded? I will give some hints that if your first response is to defend the necessity of policing, you're saying exactly what and who your priorities are and who you envision in the future alongside you. What are you expecting of the people, of us, of community? We're feeling pressed by crises and unheard. This has been a pattern that those from the margins try and reason with the powers that be. They don't super listen to us, and then we continue to try and be heard. And we end up in these meetings year after fiscal year. I hope that you all can see around the desolate, money-driven, military-obsessed future that the rest of the world powers seem to be so invested in. It isn't our destiny. It isn't our promised fate, and it doesn't have to be, as long as we make different decisions along the
30
way.
seconds remaining.
Thank you so much. I'm almost done. But yeah, we have to make different choices in order for that future not to actualize. And of course, if it was not clear, I politically, personally, ancestrally, historically, and futuristically oppose the Halifax Regional Police budget increase for 2025 and 2026, as well as the RCMP requested budget increase. And that's going to be my stance for all policing budget requests from here on out and into the future. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Ms. McDonald. Commissioners, have you any questions for Ms. McDonald? Hearing none. Thank you again, Ms. McDonald. Our next speaker is Paxton Romana. I think I'm saying that correctly.
Hi. Sorry, it's quite dark in here. My name is Paxton. I work at the library, and our branch in particular serves a lot of people from Halifax and downtown Dartmouth with a lot of unmet needs, and often find themselves houseless or starving. These folks could be housed and fed with the money the police are asking for. And as a library worker, I've also been told police are going to increase their presence in downtown libraries. This will specifically target and endanger people I work with every day. We've also had families leave the library because parents felt that their kids weren't safe with the police there, or they didn't trust the police not to hurt them even in a library space. I'm personally disgusted the city would even consider wasting money on more police staff and uniformed officers and on what can only be described as tanks rather than consider meeting the needs of the most vulnerable. Detasking the police force and making the city safer can't look like giving the police more funding for weapons or a larger presence that intimidates and puts people at risk. The police are meant to respond to crime, but they don't prevent it. Feeding people, housing people, investing in public health prevents crime. And when the police are called, they're ineffective and escalate situations, some of which I've personally been present for, both as a citizen and at work. The funding being requested by HRP could be put to better use by actually keeping people safe. The Halifax Regional Police are asking for over $100 million in comparison to the $7.5 million that was used for the purchase and installation of pallet shelters. These shelters that library staff have to connect people with almost daily. Some of these people are also feel like fleeing the ever-growing presence of interpersonal violence in our province. And transition houses in the province are full. Calling up to as far as New Glasgow has been part of my work every day. Nonetheless, having your basic needs met and valued for the mere fact that you're alive prevents crime, not an expanded police. With the money being requested, people could be fed, we could improve public transit, and the city could house people. The money is there, but the people have to beg the city to care, and we have to beg boards like you to care about regular people.
Is that it, Mr. Romana? If so, I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any questions for you.
Yes, I'm finished.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Romana? Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Lou Campbell.
Hello. My name is Lou Campbell. I live in District 8. I'm here today to urge the Board of Police Commissioners to reject the budget increase requested by the HRP and the RCMP. As the Board of Police Commissioners, you're meant to act as a link between the public and the police. So this means that you don't just represent the interests of the police, but also of the public. And I'm here today to say that I think it's in the public's best interest for you not to approve yet another increase to police budgets. One of your roles as board members is to seek the opinions of experts to create reports about policing and the ways it could be changed and improved. You've done this now several times. One of your other roles that is an implicit part of that is to listen to those experts and those reports, and this has yet to be done. A report entitled Defunding the Police, Defining a Way Forward for HRM was commissioned by the Board of Police Commissioners and released in 2022. In that report, defunding was defined and a framework for how to do it was laid out in 4 pillars. Reforms to police practices, oversight, and accountability, reforms aimed at detasking police and retasking more appropriate community service providers, legislative, regulatory, and policy reforms intended to promote community safety, and financial reforms aimed at tying police budgets to clear performance metrics and encouraging public participation in municipal budgeting, with the ultimate intention of decreasing budgetary allocations to police and increasing allocations to community-based social services. None of these pillars have been started, or even really acknowledged or mentioned in any way since. I was excited to see that Councillor Hinch, my own councillor, was appointed to the board this year. When asked pre-election about the defund report, she responded, "I believe the report and its pillars need to be seriously considered and should be incorporated, whether as is or with some review. In any case, the pillars themselves are sound and similar takes exist in many other places with positive results." I really hope, Councillor Hinch, that you'll stick to your words here and inject some of this attitude, which is sorely lacking in the board as it stands. Another report was conducted at the request of the Board of Police Commissioners and released in 2024, the Halifax Independent Civilian Review into the August 18th encampment evictions. I don't have the time to dig into the immense amount of valuable information in this report, so I will just say one valuable quote. Going forward, the board can also be more assertive in adopting its own policies to assist in providing direction to the HRP on issues such as human rights, the policing of encampments and unhoused individuals, the needs for officers to be identifiable, and the use of force, including pepper spray. We've included such policies in our recommendations. This points to the fact that the board has agency to create policy, and it's part of your job. So when is this work going to start? Has the board gone over those recommendations, and when will they be implemented? What policies have been created since the defund report came out? Have there been any financial reforms? Has any new policy been made about tying police budgets to clear performance metrics? I haven't seen this. What I have seen is a board acting in blind faith that what the police tell them is true and well-intended and necessary when there is staggering evidence to the contrary laid out in reports you commissioned that you at this point seem to intentionally not listen to. Here we are again with the police asking for more money. Do you plan to once again rubber stamp this request, as has happened at every other public presentation I've attended over the past 5 years, or will you finally listen? When will the experts you gathered and paid with public money and make a report, when were they going to be listened to? I love my city, and I want to be kind and respectful to everyone in it, including you. I want to be friendly with all of you. I don't appreciate being told I can't speak to my own personal experiences in a meeting about policing. That's utterly bizarre, honestly ridiculous. How would our own personal experiences not be related to the police budget? I'd love to ask, and hopefully that can be addressed. Another point I take issue with is you just appointed a chair, Gavin Giles, who in the past has insulted us, and I've yet to have an apology for that, so I'm still waiting on that, Mr. Giles. I want to hope for you. I want to hope for this board, but I feel really frustrated. And that's what happens when you are repeatedly ignored and insulted. So prove me wrong, please do your job, create policy that reflects the pillars of the reports you have commissioned, and please don't agree to another increase. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Campbell. Commissioners, questions for Ms. Campbell?
It's not Miss Campbell, it's just Lou. Thanks.
Commissioners, any questions for Lou? Thank you again, Ms. Campbell. Our next speaker is Kaylin Dobson.
Chair Giles, Kaylin Dobson is not in the meeting currently. Staff has reached out to them to determine if they've been experiencing technical issues. When Kaylin Dobson joins the Zoom meeting, I will let you know, and you can call upon them to speak after the current speaker finishes their comments. So we would move on to the next person on the list.
We'll move then to Jordan Roberts.
Hello. Before my 5 minutes begins, I'd just like to take a point of personal privilege and ask that in the opening remarks, Commissioner Giles requested respectful dialogue, and I have seen some misgendering. People have specifically shared aspects about their gender identity or how to address them that have been ignored, and I hope that that's not going to be the course of the rest of this meeting. So with that said, I can start with my 5 minutes. My name is Jordan Roberts, and I've been a resident of the HRM my whole life, almost 40 years. I have worked in nonprofits for 15 years, serving people impacted by criminalization, lack of access to affordable housing, and intimate partner and sexualized violence. I currently work as a sexual health and safety officer, no ties to policing, with the University of King's College. I'd like to thank and echo Kate, Paxton, and Lou for their words and insights, especially where it comes to numbers breakdowns and where funds can be reallocated. The essence of what I want to share this evening is that policing in HRM does not need a budget increase. We do not need a third tank. We do not need body cams. We do not need more officers. What we do need is a budget oversight and processes that are inclusive, accessible, responsive to, and respectful of community members that choose to engage with them. I am concerned that the considerable organizing and community engagement that we have seen here today and that has been seen at previous BOC PC meetings as well will continue to be dismissed. When community speakers to the committee overwhelmingly call for decreased funding for police while budgets are moved forward uncritiqued, it is a frustrating reflection of the transparency of this committee. Say nothing of the disrespectful comments referring to those who take the time to engage with the BOPC as canned and banal and offering nonsense and rubbish commentary. That said, I am here tonight and took the time to prepare words because I choose to believe because the kinds of changes and engagement needed in our cities do not come without trust and showing up. I choose to believe the BOPC is a group of people who share more with me than we may perhaps differ. We want committees responsive to the communities that they serve. We want neighborhoods and cities that are safe to live in. We want robust mental health supports, housing and food security for all, and meaningful interventions into the growing epidemic of intimate partner violence, all of which directly contribute to actions that result in criminalization. It has been shown over and over again, including in research reports requested by and delivered to this committee, that policing does not provide those things. Tonight, you have and will hear from individuals and organizations that have meaningful solutions to these challenges that do not require police and are being done or underfunded already. Let's invest money where it can count. Personally, I have been involved in pilot project work in the post-secondary space for the last 2 years. It addresses working with people who cause harm without relying on police interventions, with many successful stories. There are so many possibilities that can do impactful work, given the financial and other resources being asked for by the HRPD and RCMP. It is my sincere hope that the committee will truly hear the expertise, skill, experience, and insight gathered here and choose to divert funding from police and instead invest in meaningful initiatives that can deliver the safety supports and interventions needed in the HRM and across the province. Thank you.
Questions for the speaker, please. None? Thank you, Speaker. We'll move to the next speaker, Carrie Lowe.
Hello, my name is Carrie Lowe and I'm a resident of District 8. I would like to start with a quote by Carol Hanisch, "The personal is political." I'm a sexual assault survivor, a dedicated gender-based violence advocate, founder of Survivors for Change and Empowerment, and someone who has endured compounded trauma navigating the criminal justice system, the Office of the Police Complaints Commissioner, and ongoing institutional betrayal from the HRP, the RCMP, and the Nova Scotia Police Review Board. After over 6 years of silence to this board, forced by the continuous traumatic stress caused by policing and HRM, I'm here today finally speaking with my own voice. HRP has proposed a veiled 3.3 increase to its budget, which amounts to over $3 million, while the RCMP want to add 23 more officers costing over $4 million. These requests come from institutions that have repeatedly failed communities like mine, and I impose this increase. More funding for police forces that have failed survivors and our community is harmful. It prioritizes power over accountability, eroding public trust. Over the past 6 years, I have witnessed by this board a consistently unwavering pro-police bias, coupled with blatant disregard for the voices and concerns of the community that you are supposed to serve. Time and time again, the majority of speakers at this public meeting have opposed increased police budgets, yet you repeatedly dismiss their perspectives, even with evidence-based research and independent reviews, and continue to prioritize police funding over community needs. This repeated disregard erodes trust in the board and reinforces the belief that you serve the interests of the police rather than the community. Especially after the independent review into the encampment evictions was released, the previous board chair commented that the board stands firm in the support of the police services and HRM. How can the public have faith in a board that consistently turns its back on the very voices it is accountable to? Municipal lawyer John Traves emphasized that public approval is inherent in the board's decision-making, but this claim contradicts your failure to consult before adopting the RCMP model over the VAC model in sexual assault cases, which is transparent, independent, while the RCMP model lacks the necessary accountability to address systemic issues in sexual violence investigations. Again, with comments from the previous board chairs claiming that she knows what's best for survivors of sexual violence is patronizing and harmful. Her assumption to know what's best for survivors without consulting the community is a glaring example of disrespect and disregard for lived experiences. Survivors feel excluded, we feel ignored, and future discussions about the police budget must prioritize survivor-centered models and independent oversight. The proposed $3.36 million for police-worn body cameras in Halifax will not effectively support survivors of sexual violence. Instead of enhancing safety, police-worn body cameras can re-traumatize survivors by recording their experiences without consent, which could lead to misuse or bias during investigations. Research, including studies from George Mason University and Canadian Pilot Project, shows that police-worn body cameras do not reduce use of force incidents or complaints and divert attention from addressing the root causes of systemic violence. These funds could be better allocated to survivor-centered, trauma-informed practices that truly advance justice. Additionally, the Ontario Privacy Commission raised further concerns, noting that police body-worn cameras, again, violate survivors' privacy expectations in sensitive situations. The report stresses the need for a strong governance framework to ensure that body cameras respect consent, especially for vulnerable individuals like survivors. Additionally, HRP's decision to purchase 2 armored vehicles for over $400,000 without public debate raises large concerns. This purchase, justified by vague claims, contradicts the 2020 vote to reallocate funds to diversity and anti-racism initiatives and investments that would enhance community safety. More armored vehicles only contribute to police militarization and deepen mistrust between HRP, the board, and the community. Furthermore, HRP's proposed budget increase comes with a $16,000 cut to the sexual assault investigative team, which has a 91% attrition rate. Sexual offenses are the only form of violent crime on the rise in Canada, and SATE is currently barely operational. This decision sends a devastating message to both survivors and perpetrators of sexual violence. To survivors, it signals that their cases are not a priority, and to perpetrators, it suggests impunity. Our province grieves the loss of so many women to femicide in recent months. Advocates are once again calling for actionable change in the fight against gender-based violence. Our province declaring IPV as an epidemic is not enough. Our communities are becoming increasingly unsafe, not just for women, but for everyone. The decision to fund police militarization, preparing for hypothetical threats while turning a blind eye to the violence happening right at our doorsteps is a grave mistake. By prioritizing this over the services need for those fleeing intimate partner violence, HRP is failing the very people, again, it's meant to
Please
protect.
provide us with your final
More
comment.
funding, more officers, and more training will not fix policing. We've been investing in training for years, yet the fundamental issues persist. Police do not exist to protect people, they protect property, and they have no legal obligation to ensure your safety or provide a duty of care to victims of crime. Without redefining the core purpose of policing, no amount of funding or training will lead to meaningful change. In conclusion, I strongly oppose this budget increase. Allocating more funds to HRP, especially with cuts, only perpetuates the flawed system and has failed our communities. Instead, I urge the board to redirect resources toward programs that address the root cause of crime, promote community well-being, and foster true safety for all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. The speaker was over time by about 2.5 minutes, so we're going to move ahead with the next speaker, who is
We've lost the chair.
Yes, we have. Just one moment. We'll just wait for him to rejoin. I'm just promoting Chair Giles right now. While we wait for Chair Giles to re-enter the meeting, Vice Chair O'Malley, do you wish to call upon our next speaker to speak? Speaker number 8 on the list, on the annotated agenda.
Yes, I do not have the speaker's name in front of me. Could you share that with me, Madam
Yes,
Clerk?
it would be Charles Nog.
Thank you. Is Charles on the line? I don't see him on the screen in front. Oh, there I see Charles. Yeah, Charles, has he been promoted?
Yes, he has, Vice Chair.
Okay. Speaker, would you like to go ahead?
Vice Chair,
Please.
can I raise?
There, can you hear me now?
Yes, could you hold on just one moment, Charles? Commissioner Akindoju, did you have a comment or observation?
Thank you. I want to oppose that this meeting will continue until we get the chair back. There may be a way of communicating with him. We'd like to know how he's being cut off. I'll ask that we all pause until he comes back. It's just my request.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that until Andrea can advise us whether there's technical difficulties.
I'm just waiting here back from.
Okay, well, let's take a pause just for a moment until the chair has an opportunity to rejoin us. I know he would not want to miss any of the content of these speakers, so let's pause for a moment.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
I think the chair is now back with us. Chair, can you hear us? There we are. Chair, you're on mute. Still on mute. Chair, you're still on mute. We're unable to hear you, Chair. You're still on mute.
Is
Oh,
that better?
That is much better. Thank you. And we have the return of the chair, so I shall pass it back to Commissioner Giles.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Mr. Noggle, you're with us. Would you like to proceed?
Yes, my name's Charles Noggle. I was a Halifax police officer from 89 to 2020. The last 15 years as a member of the emergency response team, approximately 10 to 12 of those years I was a sergeant, meaning a team leader. The last year and a half as a team commander. I believe this gives me the ability to speak with knowledge on this matter. I'm no longer involved with HRP. I do not speak on their behalf, and the department does not know I'm doing this. I'd like to comment on the armored F-350 trucks being procured versus the ARV. The ARV is not intended nor designed to be driven on routine patrol. The ARV has completely different armor kit. I don't want to release that info that may jeopardize officers, but you should ask the department for specifics on the protection provided by each vehicle. An ARV is capable of transporting 6 to 8 people, not including the driver. It is capable of holding a stretcher. The F-350 can't. It can access locations the F-350 can't. It will probably have a skip shield, an armored shield that lowers to the ground. This prevents someone from shooting underneath the vehicle at officers standing on the side. By virtue of superior armor, it allows officers to be placed closer to dangerous situations while remaining safe. This includes hostage situations, armed barricaded subjects, high-risk warrant executions, and other events with weapons. The ability to be closer to a situation is important as it allows officers to contain a dangerous situation to a smaller area, which is safer and easier to control. The extra safety gives officers more reaction time, which may allow an officer to contemplate more responses when confronted by an armed subject. That may save the life of an armed subject. The range of less lethal weapons is not as great as that of firearms. Being able to get closer to an armed subject means officers will have more force options available to them. HRP has responded to armed subjects in parked vehicles. The ARV may allow officers to prevent that vehicle from leaving. It may prevent chases and give time to negotiate. I have mentioned armor and protection numerous times. I don't have enough time to break the differences down. However, speaking from experience, there are many common high-powered hunting rifles that make you wish you had more than a telephone pole, tree, or cinder block wall to protect you. I strongly suggest the board review rifle penetration videos on YouTube to get an idea of what rifles can do. I have to address 2 misnomers regarding ARVs. The term gun port. They are not openings with guns attached to them. They are openings that can be used for many things. Officers can deploy less lethal weapons as well as firearms. They can also drop items out of these ports if need be, an example being a phone. Term machine gun turret. HRP has never owned a machine gun. The turret allows officers the same options as ports. It also provides a higher protected observation point. I can't comment to present protocols, but I'm very confident it will be deployed by ERT under the incident command system. That means a commissioned officer who has received specialized training in managing a high-risk situation will authorize its use. Regarding the use of the RCMP vehicle, the RCMP may have it in another part of the province. They may be training with it or may be out for repairs. Using and driving an ARV is not the same as borrowing your parents' SUV. It is a specialized vehicle that you have to train with to become proficient in its use. I doubt the RCMP vehicle will be available for all that training time. I've only seen one expert quoted in the news in recent discussions, a professor from Alberta. I've reviewed his papers. They have either dealt with Boko Haram in Nigeria or tasers. In the news article, he accuses the police of bureaucratic pyrotechnics when using the term armored rescue vehicle. He then describes the vehicle as an armored tank. Webster defines a tank as an armored tracked vehicle with an offensive weapon. An ARV is not tracked nor mounted with weapons. I believe that he is the one engaged in word games. Further, he states there may be a use for an ARV in case of terrorism or armed gangs. This shows his lack of knowledge on tactics being employed by Canadian police agencies in high-risk situations. I want to comment on the dangers of policing. Much is made about the fatality rate of various professions and how many surpass that of a police officer. I have no doubt those lists of professions are dangerous. However, in policing, officers are murdered for doing their job. Their lives are purposely ended by another human being. Often they are murdered for going into a knowingly dangerous situation because that is their job. All deaths are tragic. However, murder is in a completely different realm. Regarding militarization of police, in 89, a uniformed officer issued a notebook, a revolver, 2 speed loaders, 1 set of handcuffs and baton. They bought their own body
30
armor.
seconds.
That's changed to a now 9mm pistol, 2 magazines, a taser, which is less lethal, pepper spray, which is less lethal, Narcan spray, which is first aid, CPR, which is first aid, tourniquet and clotting gauze, which is first aid, cell phone, belt mounted mini flashlight, body cam soon, ballistic vest that can hold a hard plate capable of protecting from long guns. And also most officers carry a multi-tool. Majority of these items are protective in nature, regardless of what the overall package looks like. In closing, despite the
If you can finish, Mr. Noggle, we'd be appreciated.
In closing, despite the mischaracterization that occur, an ARV is a piece of equipment that helps keep innocents and officers safer. It will keep armed subjects safer by giving officers more options for dealing with them. Again, my knowledge is based on actual experience, even if I am 5 years removed from this profession. I'm open to speak to anybody on this board or city council who wishes to speak to me. HRM have my contact information. A footnote, I've never seen a business plan regarding an ARV that mentions a water cannon. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to the next speaker, who is Tanner Van Every. And we're going to have to remind speakers that if we don't stick as closely as we can to the 5-minute limit, we'll have to book, most likely have to book another day. So we want to keep that in mind. Tanner Van Every, please.
Hi, thank you. I just want to echo first and foremost the previous statements by Kate, Paxton, Lou, and Jordan. I thought that they were very poignant, and I'm not as proficient in it, but I want to voice my opinion in opposition of the budget increase. I just think that it's not really ever about the money, as a lot of the other ones previously sort of stated. You already have $98 million. That's like literally 10.5% of the HRM budget. And it just increases every year. Last year, it was another $5.8 million increase, which was 6.3%. I don't know if you have any sort of like tangible evidence that shows that it's that $6 million has helped so far, or all the other previous like budget increases, but it doesn't really seem like it's doing anything. I think if you're really interested in finding money for body cams or anything, which I really want to emphasize Carrie Lowe's excellent points about police body cameras and the violation of like or non-consensual video of civilians. That I think that was a very interesting point that should be addressed before any conversations about body cameras should continue. But I think that really, if you're interested in like trying to find money for all of these toys, your assault vehicles or whatever people wanted to call it, I mean, you spent $2.68 million on overtime hour or on overtime pay for just 28,000 overtime hours. That's like $100 an hour. I think that if you really like were interested in finding about $3 million, like you're asking for this budget, you could probably find a way to cut a lot of that overtime hours. I just think there's a lot of like oversight, not a whole lot of accountability for maybe where all this money is going. I'm really interested to see if it would work. I don't know. Sorry to end it on not the strongest conclusion, but I definitely am firmly in opposition of another budget increase. I think there just doesn't really seem to be an end in sight for where all of this money goes, but everything for everybody else keeps getting worse and worse. And I just think that all of that money could be spent on literally anything else that would improve the public's lives better. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there questions for the speaker? Thank you, sir. Moving to the next speaker, Madison Geldart.
Hi, I'm Madison. I'm here to say that I'm in complete opposition of the budget increase. I have been to these meetings time and time again. I've prepared well thought out speaking points, and it just feels so defeating at this point because it's just time again. It's the same thing. Nobody's listened to, and the budget just goes through. Also, what the heck was that? No speaking to personal experiences. I feel like personal experiences need to be accounted for in this type of like ask. This is something that is going to be first-handedly affecting the public, and the public's experiences should be first and foremost. It's crazy that we're even trying to find something even remotely close to a tank. When have we ever needed anything like that in Halifax? To see my neighbors sleeping on the street while we're trying to fund a tank is absolutely mind-boggling to me. And like, I'm genuinely at a loss of words at this point. I can't believe that I'm here again saying the exact same things once again. And I know nothing is going to come from it. We need to be putting this money into things that will actually stop crime, like actual affordable living situations, actual affordable groceries. Like, maybe people wouldn't be stealing so much if people could actually afford what they needed. Maybe we wouldn't need such a high police presence if people would like actually have access to a dignified life. And we shouldn't need police to get to there, because police are the reason why people aren't able to live a dignified life right now. It's just another form of oppression. Marginalized people are going to be disproportionately affected by this budget increase. People are going to be harmed. I literally cannot see any reason why we should want to do this. Yeah, I literally just can't believe this is even happening and that this is even a question. And that's really it. Thanks.
Questions for the speaker, please? Oh, I think she may have left.
I'm still here.
Oh, questions for the speaker, please? Thank you, Speaker. We'll move to Collins Ellison.
Oh, I will remind the Zoom speakers that when the system asks you to accept your promotion to panelist, that you please accept that promotion, because that's how you will be able to control your mic and camera and be able to provide your comments to the board.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Ellison.
Sorry about that. First, I'd like to ask the board. No, I'm not ready. I'm not ready yet. I sent Andrea a message. She has my report. I'm looking to have that available to the public. I want to make sure that it's visible.
Collins, your report was circulated to the board as correspondence. I asked you to provide me with 2 slides, and I did not receive those.
You have page 1 and 2 of the report. You can put it on the board.
You want the first 2?
Yes, please.
I will only be sharing them briefly while you give your comment.
Please put them up the entire time. You allow police to make their presentations. Allow me to make mine. You have the report, don't you?
I'm just trying to give me a moment, please.
Okay, can you zoom in on that a little bit? Like, you can scroll with me a little bit too. I'm just going to read the contents of it, if you don't mind. Before we start, though, I'd like for us to understand that it's international law to respect the right to adequate housing. Even as much, the Special Rapporteur on Housing had just come out with a thematic report that talks about decriminalizing homelessness. And you should also be aware that there's a National Housing Strategy Act, which in 2019 found that the government of Canada would recognize the right to adequate housing. as is stated in international law, like the International Covenant of Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. So having said that, this report titled Intersectionality Between the Criminalization of Persons Experiencing Homelessness and the Cost of Incarceration within areas of Mi'kmaq, colonially known as Halifax, is just looking at those figures that we spend on policing homelessness as opposed to providing supports to those in need. And my emphasis with this presentation is to suggest that council and this board here should reject some of the proposed police budget in favor of outreach supports for persons experiencing homelessness. I'm an African Nova Scotian. I'm a descendant of Black refugees. I understand what it's like not to be wanted. I'm also a person with lived experience of having been criminalized while homeless. So with that, I'll begin. Is that okay? I still got 5 minutes? All right. So
Ellis, I started.
yeah, the corrections
on,
key
you started
indicator.
speaking. You have 3.5 minutes left.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So the corrections key indicator report from 2023, it's shown that the cost to incarcerate an adult in the Nova Scotia Provincial Jail, it exceeded $100,000 year over year. It's on average $300 per day. At current, the government of Nova Scotia provides less than $5,000, again, $5,000 per year to a person that's homeless. If you can't see the problem with that, I don't know why you're here. In addition to that, the point in time count from 2022 for Halifax region found that 85 out of 586 individuals were experiencing homelessness and found to be housed at the Central Nova Scotia Correctional Facility in Burnside. And that would have been close to 10 million to put those 85 people in jail compared to the income assistance rate for all those people combined, which would have been less than 400,000. If you don't see a problem with that, again, I don't know why you're here. You can keep scrolling there so people can see the rest of it. Andrea? Okay. Stop right there. Your little bandwidth thing is, yeah, it's peering up there for me. Okay. So comparatively, the government of Nova Scotia, like again, would have spent over $9 million more to put these people in jail as opposed to providing housing support. Now you're going to argue the jurisdiction, but here's where it's important. So this 2022 point time count, again, finding that 85 people were in jail. The average population in a jail at that time was 500 or 465 people. So when we're looking at how many people were in jail that we knew were experiencing homelessness, that's nearly 20% of the jail population. And I'm going to argue that these people didn't find themselves in jail by themselves. They had some type of police interaction along the way. And as a person who was criminalized during these times, I can tell you that a police's first interaction with you, they're not there to ask about your housing conditions. So again, like we can keep scrolling, but the point here is that we're violating international law by criminalizing homelessness. Please keep going. There's the references there. If anybody wants to stop, take a picture, you see the time. Okay. All right. So again, you want to argue jurisdiction. You work closely with the provincial government, who also provides part of the police budget. Let's be clear. Okay. So the government spending a little less than 60 million to build 222 public housing units. How many people are on the housing wait list at the moment?
30 seconds remaining.
Over 7,000, over 8,000. Okay. So when we're looking at this, we have to understand that we're criminalizing people by choice, and it's disproportionately affecting Black and Indigenous people. Black folk are 3 times as likely to end up in jail or homeless in HRM. That's a policy choice. That's a policy choice, I would say, that is an investment into anti-Black racism. And if your board is considering of equity and diversity, then you have to look at this.
Thank you, sir.
You have the whole report. There's no reason why it can't be shared with all of you.
Sir, it was shared with everybody and everybody's read it prior to your presentation.
Oh, you can read now, can you? What does it say?
Well, I'm not going. we're not going to engage in that sort of debate with you, sir. You've had your say.
Okay, so if you can't tell me what it says, then you're gonna read it. So don't sit here and play games.
We'll move.
That'd be
We'll
good.
move to the,
Chair,
we'll move now to the
Mr.
next speaker,
Ellison
please.
cannot conduct himself in a more appropriate behavior. I suggest you just cut him off. Thank you.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll move to the next speaker. Thank you, sir. The next speaker is difficult for me to pronounce. I have it as Oikyu Su Gierler.
Yes, Chair Giles, and our staff has reached out to the speaker. They had an emergency appointment, so they're not going to be able to join right away. They are hoping to join later in the meeting. However, they do understand that if the meeting's concluded when they join, that they won't be able to participate. So we can move on to the next speaker on the list.
The next speaker is Natasha Hines.
Hi there, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My name is Natasha Hines. I am the board chair of an organization called Wellness Within. We're an organization for health and justice. And I'm here today to share with you that I am opposing the increase in the HRP budget for the 2025-2026 fiscal period. I was able to join you guys last year when discussing the budget. And once again, the HRP is asking for a significant increase in funding. And as you've heard from many people today, and will continue to hear, many oppose this increase. And I urge the Board of Police Commissioners to truly hear what the public are telling you at these meetings, as they raise very valid concerns. So Wellness Within is a feminist organization working towards gender justice specifically, and continuing to invest more money into police forces truly is a slap in the face to advocacy organizations and community members when the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings absolutely do not recommend an increase in policing. Intimate partner violence and related deaths have been on the rise in Nova Scotia, as we all know, and have been seeing in the news, especially cases of femicide. And it has been recognized as an epidemic, but this is not enough. Very few recommendations from the Mass Casualty Commission have been implemented. One in particular, and of particular importance, is that gender-based violence prevention and interventions receive epidemic level funding, core funding for community supports, programs, and advocacy. And this is where funding should be redirected. In addition to this, we are continuing to see an increasingly militarized police force. Last year, when I spoke with you, we talked about how Chief Don McLean mentioned concerns regarding the rising cost of ammunition. And this year, we are hearing about the HRP purchasing armored vehicles and wanting to purchase a militarized APC. These vehicles fight fire with fire and have significant implications for public safety and police violence. Instead of being able to purchase such weapons through a separate corporate budget to bypass public involvement, we demand that this be included in the HRP operating budget and be available for public debate. The process so far has been full of deception and demonstrates an enormous lack of accountability, and something that very much does affect the public. Huge expenditures on weapons and body-worn cameras do not promote public safety. They fail to address the housing crisis, the increase in poverty in the HRM, and in the epidemic that is the intimate partner violence. And policing will never be a solution to these issues. Pouring more money into the HRP budget contributes more to the endangerment of our most marginalized communities and not to safety. So I encourage the board in the city instead to look at ways we can implement recommendations from the Mass Casualty Commission proceedings and the Defund the Police report. I'll close with a remark as a healthcare worker and as a nurse. We are continually asked to do more with less, and we are continually told that we are failing. Police forces continue to receive more funding and are reassured that they are trying their best. We know that funding allocations to community and healthcare resources lead to better outcomes, and we have yet to see continued increases in funding allocations to police leading to anything positive. I ask that you consider this when you hear that people oppose the increase in policing budgets in the HRM. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines. Questions for Ms. Hines, commissioners? Thank you. Our next speaker is Echo Tatry.
Chair Giles, Echo Tatry is not in the Zoom meeting. Our office has left a voice message with her. However, she's not presently in the meeting. When they join, I will let you know, and they can be called upon to speak. So please call on the next speaker on the list.
The next speaker is Nancy Hunter.
Hi, excuse me. Yes, Nancy Hunter. I live in District 11. I have lived in this district. I've lived in HRM all my life and in this district most of my life. I want to start by saying a few things. One is that I was disappointed that there wasn't two meetings like there usually is, a virtual meeting and a in-person meeting. I think that we all already feel, as you've heard from other speakers, that community engagement is not considered, that there is no meaningful community engagement with budgeting or policing. And so canceling one of those meetings, yes, I know it was because of shortage of time, but I think that if we prioritize things, we can make things happen. So I wanted to say that. I also want to comment on the opening rules said by the chair. I don't know if umbrage is a good word, but first of all, saying that there will be no trashing, framing it as trashing of police, I think is an interesting framing. I would frame that as critique, evidence-based critique is what I hear. I've been to many of these meetings. I've heard a lot of these speakers. And so I think that's a very unfair framing. I also am gobsmacked about the personal experience. Personal experience is how one of the biggest forms of how we know and understand things. And so to not be able to use personal experience is just, it's kind of shocking in this day and age that's being excluded. I also wonder if it's only personal experience if we are critiquing policing, but personal experience is positive, I don't know, is seen as much as a problem. And the other part about the social justice, these budgets don't exist in vacuums. There is so much correlation between what we spend money on and policing and social issues that to be so reductive that these are separate issues makes absolutely no sense. So I just want to echo too, so many of the things that have been said so articulately and intelligently and thoughtfully by engaged citizens in our community. There's so much knowledge here that we have. And it is just infuriating to me that over and over again, this goes back decades from different communities who have not been listened to by this board. And so, yes, we technically have public engagement, but I think that you're hearing the sentiment that we are not only not listened to, but often disparaged and insulted. I just find this astonishing. And so I just want to say a few things that I think may not have been said by others. And one of them is about, and I guess I didn't state that I am firmly against all increases to policing. As many others have said, we take money, all the public money that goes towards policing is public money that is not going to organizations and people who are doing the work of safety and well-being in our city. And I think if there is one thing that we all agree on here, is that police are overtasked and are doing work that they shouldn't be doing, that they are not trained to do, that is better done by community. And this is very simple math. We can't just add the odd program. It is about detasking and retasking, and that is addition and subtraction.
30 seconds remaining.
Oh, I didn't even get to my main points. Okay, what I'm going to say is the new August 18th report is really, really good. And every other report has collected dust and the same things. And there's a lot of policy and oversight and transparency. And this board cannot continue to okay things like armored vehicles, body cams, anything to do with gender-based violence when they don't have policies on human rights, use of force, when they have been told over and over again, but that they are not doing your jobs in basic policy, basic transparency. And when you don't even have any of these basic policies in place, well, thank you. I didn't finish.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker is Veronica Post.
Chair Giles, Veronica Post is not in the Zoom meeting currently. Staff have reached out to her, and when Veronica joins the meeting, I will let you know so that they will be able to give a chance to speak. So please move to the next speaker.
Alan Joyce, please. Mr.
Hello?
Joyce, whenever you're ready.
Okay, I was going to set my timer here so I don't go over. My name's Alan Joyce. I live in Windsor Junction out Fall River Way. Mostly I'm here to talk about the ARV, the armored vehicle. I know that came up a couple of years ago in the budget discussions, and I only found out about it because of the Coast had written an article about it. And I went online trying to find out the original budget proposal for it, and I couldn't find it. I'm sure it's there, but it seems to me that that is an awfully expensive vehicle to buy and would be an extremely expensive vehicle to maintain and to train on. I can't see where we have the RCMP vehicle and we're in a military town that there can't be, if it's needed, and you know, I listened to Mr. Charles Noggle there. He made some excellent points because he's the one that's been on the other end of that, and I can appreciate that nobody wants to be shot at. That there can be a sharing of resources between the military and Halifax, the RCMP, who is already under budget and under contract with HRM. That if such a vehicle is needed, you know, it's very, very rare that such a vehicle would ever be needed, I would think, that there can't be something worked out where there's a joint contract and training between the HRP and the RCMP and even the military. And as far as driving the unit, I'm sure there's somebody in the military or the RCMP that knows how to drive such a vehicle that would be available if it was ever needed, that the police force would be inside the vehicle but not driving it. I can appreciate that that vehicle would be difficult to drive, but I don't see any reason why the city would take on training somebody to drive it and then for it to occasionally be used at a cost of $500,000 to $1 million. I just don't understand. I think it would be much better use to help people on the streets that are living rough. You know, there's so many other uses for those funds than something like that. That would be my main comment. The body cams, I haven't dug into that too much. I can't see that that's a very good idea. I'm not a fan of cameras to begin with, but maybe there's a use for it. As far as increasing the budget for the police, I think resources need to be moved over to community services and mental health and that sort of thing. Not necessarily defunding the police, but refunding organizations that can help people so that they don't get into trouble, so that they don't need to be speaking to the police or interacting with the police. That I think is a better use of any increase of funding at this point. We are growing as a city, so I'm sure that there is some need to increase funding and work in different areas of the city. I know that there's a budget item there for a police officer or community officer out here in Fall River. There's probably a need for that. I see Eastern Passage and so on. So those sort of things I can see. But overall, I think resources should be concentrated on mental health, helping people that are living rough. The homeless situation needs to come to an end. And I really don't see funding an ARV. I think that is just overkill. That's about it. Any questions or anything? Thank you.
Commissioners, questions for Mr. Joyce? Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
We'll move to the next speaker, Nicole Corrado.
Hello. I'm sorry, I'm trying to change it from being a bunny there. I would just like to say I agree with what everybody else was saying, that we really do need to be defunding the police. And one of the things I would say as a person on the autism spectrum, what we really need to be looking at is creating a non-police mental health and wellness community crisis program like the City of Toronto has. The City of Toronto has this really excellent program called Taboo. It's where they have mental health workers and volunteers and trained staff who are not police officers to come, and they wear a lanyard. So it's kept very, very discreet. So they wear the special lanyard that says they're the part of the Toronto Community Crisis Service. It's a wonderful alternative to policing, and I would love to see Halifax develop that. I know Halifax is a police hybrid program where they have a police officer along with a social worker, but that's not enough. We need to have a non-police alternative, because the majority of mental health calls are not violent and do not need a police presence. The other thing I was going to say is that I noticed that Halifax does not have a missing persons unit, and that could be problematic because missing persons need a real skill set. I would also comment on how missing persons are being reported. One of the things I noticed is that Halifax still puts the full names. Toronto only uses the first name. That way it protects the person's privacy. Because even if you delete from the police site, the full name will still be, because they'll cut and paste, other news outlets will cut and paste from the police site and put it on their sites as a separate post. So the only way to protect the person's privacy is to only publish the first name. And it's less information is more in a missing persons bulletin. And the City of Toronto only uses the first names in a missing persons bulletin. I am a civilian member of the Toronto Police Service's Missing and Missed Implementation Team. And if you guys are going to be starting a missing persons unit or missing and missed implementation team, I'd love to give you feedback. But getting back to the mental health crisis service, one thing they have in Montreal's West Island is in places like Bay d'Urfé and Pointe Claire is something called the Sauvetage. So it's a volunteer search and rescue that would really, really help the police be able to find missing persons. Missing persons cases always have to have police involved because it could become criminal, but it would allow missing persons to be found, especially a missing person who is neurodivergent or vulnerable. It would be really, really helpful. So I think more detasking of police toward community services like a community crisis service for mental health and community search and rescue organizations is what's really needed for the City of Halifax. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Any questions for Ms. Corrado?
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions, if I may.
Sure.
Nicole, thanks very much. You mentioned two organizations, and I didn't catch them. The non-police team in Toronto. Did you say it's TABO? Can you spell that for me, please?
It's the Toronto Community Crisis Service.
Toronto Community Crisis Service. Okay. And the last organization that you mentioned with the volunteer missing persons, what was that organization called also?
Called Sauvetage. It means save in French.
Okay. Thank you for that. Those references. I appreciate it.
Vice Chair O'Malley.
Yes, my questions were exactly the same. I'm typing notes and I couldn't quite catch the acronym, but Commissioner Mancini has seeked clarification, and I have it in my notes now. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. We'll move next to Gordon Carson.
So Chair Giles, our next three speakers, Gordon, Corinne, and Elizabeth, are not currently in the Zoom meeting. Staff have reached out to them, but we have not received a response. If either of those speakers do join the Zoom meeting, I will let the board know so that you can hear comments from them. So please move to speaker 22 on your list.
We're then on speaker 22, Christina Tallez or Talley. I suggest we take a 5-minute break and come back after our break with Ms. Talley.
Thank you, Chair. We will put the break screen up momentarily.
Mhm.
Chair Giles, are we ready to come back from break?
Yes, we are.
I will ask our staff to drop the break screen, please. So Chair Giles, you can restart the public consultation part of the meeting, please.
Our next speaker is Christina Talley. Ms. Talley, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Thank you. It's Tellez. Are you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yes, my name is Christina Tellez. I'm a graduate of the Schulich School of Law, and I'm a member of the local Quaker community. I am deeply disturbed and concerned about the proposed increase in the police budget, as well as the way in which the Halifax Regional Police are attempting to buy a third vehicle without public input. The police are a tool of genocide. They've been abetting and carrying out genocide on Turtle Island here in Mi'kma'ki, and they are part of the same systemic structures that are carrying out genocides in Palestine, Sudan, and the Congo and other parts of the world. The Yellowheads Institute recently published a brief entitled 2 Weeks, 6 Dead, Police Violence, Indigenous Dehumanization, and Canadian Indifference. Over a 2-week period, August 29th to September 9th, 2024, just a short snapshot of time, police across Turtle Island killed 6 Indigenous people. The police were essential in carrying out the genocide against Indigenous peoples during the residential school systems and continue to be central to the genocide of Indigenous people on Turtle Island through the shameless, blatant killings that continue today. It is shameful that the police would be granted even more money to continue the violence that they inflict on society, and particularly Innu and African Nova Scotian communities. This is well documented. For example, we know from the 2019 Wortley report that the African Nova Scotian communities are disproportionately policed, with Black people in Halifax 3 times more likely than white people to be stopped by police. An institution like the police is based in patriarchal values of domination, violence, discrimination, and cannot be reformed. It cannot be fixed. It cannot escape from its historic and current mandate of oppression of marginalized communities. No matter how many cultural competency workshops are done, how many trainings police undergo, the concept itself of the police will always go against values of community care, transformative justice, and accountability. We need true justice that is based on harm reduction, transformation, care, trust, and community-based knowledge. Just as so many of the speakers have spoken about today, we community-based organizations, community-based leaders know what we need to do and need to be empowered to do that, to actually reclaim justice. We need to know that when we're in a hard situation, we can call on help that won't show up with a gun or a tank. And it's great news that Halifax will be launching a civilian crisis response team, but that should mean that the police budget is decreased, not that the police will be freed up for other work. When we say defund the police, we don't mean take additional funds or create additional funds for other teams. We mean stop funding the police. So we need to stop paying more and more money to violent and oppressive forces that have and continue to carry out genocide on these lands. We speak about the rise in fascism in the States and countries around the world, but fascism is upon us. Fascism looks like police on top of their budget increase, getting a third unvetted armored vehicle. We don't need to look south or across the ocean to be horrified about how violence is being carried out. The continued and increased militarization of the HRP is fascism. The HRP is part of the same fascist system that is supporting the genocide of Indigenous Palestinians in Gaza, just as we need Canada to divest from Israel and an arms embargo on weapons that are used to carry out genocide.
Taye, could you stick with the budget presentation, please?
I am about to connect them up. So there's parallels here between divesting from weapons abroad and divesting from police on Turtle Island. They're part of the same system. And when you try to separate them, that's when they're seen in a silo. That's when it's extremely dangerous, because then it's not seen as fascism that is increasing. It's seen as, $3 million more for cameras. When we break it down like that, we don't see the way that increasing budgets means continued funding of genocide here. And I'd like to use my last few seconds to read a poem by Saf Hack, a local poet. She wrote, "Police showed up at the protest because they'll protect parking lots and private property before people. And the empty buildings building weapons mean more to them than the human beings they're built to destroy." Thank you.
Thank you. Questions for Ms. Taye? Thank you. Our next speaker is M. Bailey.
And Chair Giles, M. Bailey is not in the Zoom meeting, so staff have reached out to them, and if and when they do join the meeting, I will let the board know.
We will move to Hannah Cameron.
Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Also, before my time, I'm just going to echo some of my community members and remind the board and encourage them to not use gendered language unless you know how the people identify. Speaker is fine, or the name given, just as an aside. I'll also echo comments on not speaking about personal experiences with regards to police today, presumably when it's received as critique, but former cops are available to speak on their experience and how those personal insights influence their understanding of what is needed in our resource distribution. I'll also thank my community members for jumping through whatever hoops they had to be here on this unpaid time to discuss this again, and making the information available to the public in a way that was accessible, in a way that the board or the HRP or RCMP or the city or province ever seemed to manage to do. In regards to this meeting, I'm not sure what else I can say or my community members can say that we haven't said before. And I don't know how much I can parrot it back. That's the same sentences, like how much time these things take in regards to defunding the police. We're now looking down the barrel of a projected $100 million plus annual budget for HRP, plus toys for the cops coming out of other community needs above and beyond this budget, which is ludicrous and violent. Almost everyone I'm directly connected to is experiencing precarious housing or houselessness and manufactured food insecurity. Community groups have released annual reports, and local reports in general are revealing data indicating things like 1 in 5 children are living in poverty in Nova Scotia. Food banks, community fridges have skyrocketed. The housing crisis continues, with 65% of Nova Scotians experiencing housing challenges, according to Stats Canada. Intimate partner violence appears to be escalating, which we also know has direct ties to the police in the worst ways. So where and who do these victims turn to? Because it's also reported by local organizations like Survivors for Change that 91% of reported sexual offenses, and that's the reported ones, we know a lot doesn't get reported, didn't result in any charges by HRP. And we talk about folks in mental health crisis. While I'm glad to see that there is some support behind a civilian response team, let's remember that that need stems from a lack of trust and a lack of safety that people feel with the police. A local study last year with folks living and sometimes struggling with mental health and substance dependencies found that 89% of the respondents were uncomfortable or very uncomfortable with police even being involved in crisis response. And the amount of violence and death Indigenous and Black people have experienced at the hands of local police is deplorable. So if we want to talk about the many hats that police wear and what they respond to locally, maybe other projects could get funding and the more qualified and welcomed community members could have those resources and wear some of those hats, assuming HRP and RCMP don't hoard all the resources. So all this is to say, if the city continues to invest in a resource like the police that robs from other community growth potential and enacts violence and intimidation on the people, this is the same thing every year. So I'm sure my community members are going to continue to bring our points home, but obviously I absolutely am disgusted, even a discussion around raising more money for the cops. So that's all I have to say this time around.
Thank you, Speaker. Questions for the Speaker? Thank you again, Speaker. Willa Oakes is our next speaker.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello. My name is Willa. I was pretty disturbed by you asking people to not wear masks in this meeting. That was really weird. I'm just gonna say that. Anyway, along with all the other rules that you mentioned that we've never heard before. Okay, hi, my name is Willa. I'm a resident of District 9 and I deeply oppose all increases to the HRP and RCMP budgets. Policing is a violent institution and any and all investments in policing is an act of violence. I can't lie, I did not prepare a full speech this year because, to be honest, I was totally gutted when I saw that the commissioner who insulted us last year, calling our comments canned, banal, bizarre, rubbish, and annoying, became the chair of this board. Last year, we filled the room, as we have again tonight, full of people and community coming together and speaking in opposition of this budget, sharing professional and personal experiences. And to be insulted in that way is so demoralizing. And if you want anybody to believe this board is legitimate at all, that behavior needs to be addressed immediately. And we never got any sort of accountability or apology or any sort of public recognition that that was messed up, despite sending an open letter to the board and all of City Council. I don't have that much more to say. I think my community has really spoken so well and I want to echo everything. Yes. I just wanted to say that I think it's extremely horrible and undemocratic that the CAO was allowed to approve armored vehicles for the HRP with no process. Literally in the clip of the meeting that I watched, the police chief or one of the police officers literally sounds surprised that they didn't need any sort of process to approve it. And yeah, that was, I'm at a loss for words. I am glad that we've showed up. I'm glad to see that from what I've seen, the only person in favor of this budget is a police officer who just kind of came on and described in detail why the police need a tank. And so I think if you guys decide to approve this budget, you'll just be showing your hand once again that you are here just to give the cops whatever they want. And I have yet to see in my years speaking at these meetings any sort of recognition that you guys take what we say into consideration, especially after last year and Gavin Giles' horrible comments. That's all I have to say right now. I'll see you all again, I'm sure. But yeah.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker is Ames Mather or Mather.
Hi, my name is Ames Mather. I live in District 8. I'm here once again to strongly oppose any and all increases in the HRP annual budget. Additionally, I'm here to object to the use of additional funds from the corporate fleet budget for the added purchase of HRP militarized vehicles. There is unequivocally no need for additional purchases of armored vehicles when 2 F-350s were already opaquely approved and purchased without public consultation through the CAO. It's imperative that the funds used for purchase of militarized vehicles be moved from the corporate fleet budget to the annual HRP budget to ensure due process and community consultation cannot be improperly bypassed by the COA in the future, or CAO, sorry. We have seen HRM's CAOs consistently exercise blatant abuse of authority to bypass public process and consultation in regard to both police funding and conduct over the last several years. The purposeful lack of clarity from the CAO surrounding the already existing purchase of 2 F-350s is concerning at best, and more accurately, an abhorrent indiscretion to the residents of HRM. The public are owed explanations on how these vehicles will be outfitted and utilized, as this is a clear issue of community safety as well. HRP cited that these vehicles are needed for utilization in hot zones, and I'm curious to know, what are hot zones to HRP? Will these vehicles have machine gun hardware? What other weaponized hardware will these vehicles be equipped with? This information is imperative as HRP has shown a clear record of inappropriate use of force in response in community settings and interactions. Additionally, many services that rely on funds from the corporate fleet budget are largely under-resourced and require more immediate attention than the erroneous purchase of a tank-adjacent militarized vehicle for the already over-resourced, over-armed, and overfunded police force in Halifax. Take snow removal, for example. Sidewalks and roads are critical hazards in the winter for days and weeks after storms for both pedestrians and drivers. Additionally, the lack of availability of sidewalk snow removal machines means that pedestrians and mobility aid users are unable to navigate our already inaccessible city safely in the winter, often pushing people to use roadways to maneuver around impassable sidewalks and crosswalks. Further, we've seen time and again the under-resourcing of fire services in HRM, which, if we're citing climate change, should be the first to be outfitted with additional vehicles and resources to respond to the ever-growing risk of climate disaster in HRM. Additionally, there's call for extra funding to resource civilian staff under the new HRP budget. Approving funds for HRP to house this new civilian staff position has been incorrectly conflated with detasking. Let me be clear, detasking refers to the direct need to externalize funds and services from the HRP, allocating them back to community services and resources. Approving more funds for positions within the HRP is not detasking. It's the strategic co-opting of language to appease public interest without real and meaningful engagement in community-centered detasking initiatives. I have some questions for HRP and the Board of Police Commissioners. How will we move forward with true detasking if the Board of Police Commissioners will not deny the budget increase for a single year to explore how these funds could be meaningfully utilized in community settings? Further, how can we trust the Board of Police Commissioners to be operating in the best interest of residents if every year we're back here sharing our dissent, citing evidence-based concern for community around HRP, and we're consistently ignored, consistently silenced, and mocked, looking at you, Gavin Giles. Lastly, and unrelated to the budget, but I implore the HRM staff here to do a quick Google search on gender-neutral honorifics and gender-neutral language. It's astonishing that staff at HRM, with a budget as robust as you have for DEIA, would still be stumbling over these pieces in 2024. It's unacceptable to misgender people so consistently, and especially in recorded and public forums. That's all for me tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker is Kira Blackadar.
Hello, I'm Kira Blackadar, a District 7 resident, CRIM student, and rep for Survivors for Change and Empowerment. I am speaking today in opposition to the HRP budget, particularly to specific resource allocation and a lack of transparency in spending. I have seen praise that an increase of only 3.3% or $3,200,000 more are being requested this year. Well, this is already an exorbitant amount. Had IT and communication costs been included in this figure, HRP would be requesting a 4.5% to 5% raise in 2025-2026. The city's municipal budget should not be used to shield money that HRP consumes, and an individual CAO should not have unfettered ability to spend $500,000 on militarized vehicles from a separate corporate fleet budget. This form of financial maneuvering, militarization, and lack of external oversight is one of many reasons that civilian trust in HRP is at such a low. With a budget that continues to skyrocket, one would expect to see crime rates lowering year by year. Annual messaging around budget meetings suggests that HRP just needs more money to prevent crime. Yet, as study after study has shown us, funding the police does not have a positive relationship with crime reduction. We see this evidenced by HRP themselves. This year, HRP SAIT reported a 91% attrition rate. From January to August of 2024, only 9% of sexual assault victims that accessed your system saw arrests made. This deprioritization of victims of crime is financially reflected in your budget. A message is clearly sent to ignored victims of GBV when more money is spent on vehicle storage or office or vacancy management than in response to crimes of sexualized violence. HRP SAIT is empirically failing and has been for years. I am disturbed to think about the reality of my community's safety should sexual offenders in HRM be aware that 91% of such reports to police can go without arrest. If you truly feel comfortable with budget cuts to the SAIT team in light of an IPV and GBV crisis, then I would urge you to go further and detask to entities actually equipped to respond to victims of sexualized violence. Sexual offenses are the only form of violent crime on the rise, and HRP's priority is clearly not in responding to the victimization of individuals in HRM. If community organizations received millions annually allocated to a failing department, I truly believe that victims would be better off. I note that while the SAIT unit saw a budget cut this year, the executive's office is proposed to see a 308% increase. As evidenced by the SAIT unit's attrition rate these last 4 years, Halifax regional police officers are not consistently or effectively carrying out core tasks of policing. Yet, HRP gets millions more each year. The Mass Casualty Commission report identifies a collective and systemic failure to protect women and gender diverse peoples. HRP is contributing to this failure. Despite decades of reports indicating this reality, HRP has clearly not listened. These reports identify chronic underfunding of community GBV resources, lack of housing, and inadequacies in police response as perpetuating the status quo. Seeing budget cuts to SAIT this coming year while nearly $500,000 is budgeted for HRP's clothing allowance is sickening. 16% of HRP officers are on some form of leave. The average HRP officer is making between $76,000 and $110,000 a year. With these aforementioned attrition rates, impacts of systemic racism, and harms committed against unhoused and mentally ill folks, one asks themselves if police are costing our communities more than they serve. Year after year, members of the public come to this Board of Commissioners, informing them of community sentiment against raising police budgets, informing you of extensive evidence demonstrating a need to instead invest this level of funding elsewhere, into housing supports, into food security, mental health care, and gender-based violence response, in order to actually prevent crime. I am of the opinion that a police organization that cannot handle the investigation of sexual offenses should not be spending hundreds and thousands on militarized vehicles. HRM citizens do not need tanks. We need investments made directly into our community to improve our safety. Evidence-based policing has been cited by HRP as a goal for the next year. Research shows that more money invested in police budgets is not a preventative crime study. University of Toronto Press studied the relationships between police budget increases and the Crime Severity Index. In 20 municipalities across Canada, they found no strong correlation between change in police funding and net change in crime rates. I would like to wrap up with a quote from the Defunding the Police report, defining the way forward for HRM. Advocates of defunding focus on the idea that police are ill-equipped to prevent crime and should not be expected to solve complex social problems. Policing and the use of force does not prevent harm, often does not meet the needs of victims, particularly in cases of sexual assault or domestic violence, and does not adequately rehabilitate or reintegrate those who have caused harm. 3 years after the release of this report, this point still requires arguing. I urge the Board of Commissioners to directly imagine what a
30 seconds remaining.
101 million could do if not allocated to HRP, but instead directly to our community's needs. I yield the rest of the time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Thompson.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thank you. My name is Emily Thompson. I live in District 7. I'm going to try to keep this short because I'm sick. But I feel like we don't need more evidence that the HRP exists to protect property and not the people in the city. $1.5 million for armored vehicles as part of a $100 million budget for the police won't get people housed. It won't support workers. It won't protect marginalized communities or contribute to climate action or any of the many things that we should be funding and putting public funds towards. You are normalizing the militarization of this city, which goes in parallel with what we're seeing from RCMP violence in Wet'suwet'en Nation and across the coast to coast. And also the armored vehicles that Canada continues to send to Israel and around the world, perpetuating the same violence, which you claimed earlier to be separate, but it is evident it is not, because it's the same mentality that is fueling the violence in our city and inflating the budgets that are withdrawing from social services and from the people that need them most. As I said, I'm sorry. Jeez. So the recent announcement for the public proposed civilian crisis response team, which I look forward to seeing implemented this year, 2025, is hopeful. And that is where we should be focusing our attention. And I know it's separate, but it is refreshing.
Who is this? No, this is Emily Thompson.
You are unmuted. Okay. As I was saying, it comes in a refreshing opposition to what we are seeing, this like militarization, this narrative that you're perpetuating through the tanks and through all of this. But it should not be then that we turn around and we put more public funds towards this budget that overlooks facts, public opinion, ignores the path laid out in front of us by reports and documents like defunding the police, defining a way forward, which you seem to be unable to implement after so much community work has been done to present this document and these facts. And yeah, I'm sick. I'm going to keep this short, but these are public funds. You need to trash this budget and do better. The public deserves better. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Isabel Tees.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for letting us speak. I do hope that you take some of this stuff to heart, because I know it has been several years that people have spoken and nothing's been done. I'd also like to start by recognizing that we're here on the unceded land of the Mi'kmaq people, who, along with many Black Nova Scotians, are overrepresented in jails of this provincial and municipal colonial project. We all of us need to do better, but I'm specifically asking the HRP to get their act together and put more effort into keeping Indigenous and Black people out of jail. Can we try? I'd also like to state very clearly that I also oppose any increase in the budget for all the reasons that everyone has given here today. They have spoken so eloquently on so many items and in such detail and with great background and research that I really hope you actually hear as that, as not only people with lived experience, but people who have taken the time to research and to look into this. And why? Because they want to create community. And policing is so anti-community. But I'm getting off track right now. The armored trucks. You know, I was going to quote that criminologist that Charles thought doesn't really know what they're talking about. But whether or not that criminologist is right, I really have to ask, when was the last time Halifax police were shot at in their cars or killed on duty? I don't want to be disrespectful, and I understand nobody wants anybody dead. I totally get that, and I support that. But I'm talking about risk here. In the past 30 years, I did some research, and all I could find were 2 RCMP officers that were shot in the last 30 years. One in 2020, that was Portapique RCMP officer, and another RCMP officer in 1996. I haven't seen any mention of an HRP officer, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but how does HRP assess risk? Like, I can't see that there's a problem to solve here. Unless it's a bad case of FOMO, we don't need these armored vehicles. Funds can definitely be used elsewhere, as many other people have eloquently spoken. Just a quick look at the 2023 Nova Scotia Department of Finance stats, where it showed 1,465 violent crimes in Halifax in 2022. By the way, that crime rate was going down that year too. When you look at Stats Canada, it says violent crimes are increasingly likely to involve firearms. And in brackets, 2.8 of violent crimes in 2022 compared to 2.2% in 2013. So that's a 0.6 increase in 9 years. Let's just give it an extra 2% to hit 2024, shall we? So let's say that it's 3% of violent crimes today involve firearms. So of those 1,465 violent crimes in 2022, 44 of them included firearms. So for those 44 firearm-related events in Halifax that the HRP would have handled, why do we need tanks again? Why are we spending $500,000 on 2 of them and then suggesting a third? I do not see the risk that needs to be mitigated here. All I'm seeing is fear-mongering and a ridiculous waste of city taxes that could be used so much better elsewhere. And quickly on the subject of the first 2 armored vehicles, I agree with so many of the other speakers. I have to say this feels very much like a child who goes to mom to get something. Mom says, no way, and then you go to dad to get it. Because city and its constituents were very clear back in 2019 that when you wanted to buy an armored truck, it was a resounding no, N-O. So now you find a way to get in through the back door, not just 1, but 2 tanks via the capital budget. You took something you knew the public didn't want, and you used this budget to get around it, to get around the oversight of it. And that is not only disappointing, incredibly disappointing, but it feels downright sneaky. Such a blatant disregard for the people's voices. That's how you're coming off right now. This needs to be in the operating budget in order to have oversight. I was going to talk a little bit more about sexual assault and that we're doing a crappy job here on managing that, and maybe some resources could go there instead of some tanks. I think that was handled pretty well by Kira and Hannah. I would really love you to act on the reports that we've already spent a ton of money on them, and you're not acting on the actual reports that have come out. Please do that before wasting any more of our money. And at the end of the day, I am a proponent of absolutely defunding the police and putting funds into prevention, into community, into tackling the issues of poverty and oppression, and providing education and care. I really hope that you hear me, and I hope that you hear all these other people who have spoken today, because we're trying to speak the truth to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Wibke Kungl. Do we have Wibke Kungl?
I'm here. Hello.
Thank you.
Hi. My name is Vipka Kungl. Firstly, I would love to applaud and echo what the vast majority of the speakers this far have so passionately and painstakingly shared. I can't express how proud I am of everybody in my community. So while there's not a whole lot of new sentiments I can add to what's already been shared, I'll just say that I've learned a lot, and I feel emboldened in my stance. And that stance is also that I am quite against any increase in the budget. So throwing my opinion in the ring for whatever it may be worth. I'm going to read a little email I've just written to the board as well, which I will send along after the meetings. Like I said, I am against the budget increase, and actually believe that defunding and not inflating the already bloated budget of the police is necessary to create any real, lasting, or sustainable change in our communities. I do believe defunding the police in order to fund other programs in our communities is essential in our path forward. If our path forward is to be a more healthy, just, and equitable society for all its members. And I want you to consider this, because is that what we're working towards here? Because sometimes it doesn't feel like that. And I think if you listen to the elite and you listen to the people in charge, that doesn't feel like what we're working towards with an increase in police budgeting. Police, I find, are a reactionary service. They react to situations, which is kind of a band-aid in its best iteration, but never ending funding to an organization that only ever reacts to situations and often reacts poorly and with no actual efficacy is never going to deal with the root cause of the issue and therefore will never actually solve anything. Money desperately needs to be allocated to fund social services, whether it be through community centers, libraries, and its myriad of social programmings, mental health facilities and resources, addiction services, trained outreach teams, safe and community housing and housing support for the unhoused or precariously housed, and safe drug use sites, trained crisis management teams, etc. While HRP receives some training regarding these things, it's heavily lacking. And like one speaker said today, the police are largely overtasked. And I don't think you can disagree with us on that. The rest of the system is so grossly underfunded to actually support people where it's needed. So police can only do so much, and it's been with my own, and I've seen with my own eyes how little that actually is. People get moved through the system, if the system has space for them, which often doesn't, only to end up back where they started at best. Social programming and mental health initiatives prevent the need for people to constantly be calling the police, because social programs help keep people out of situations where they're needing to call. Money needs to be reallocated and poured into prevention, not criminalization, especially when that criminalization still disproportionately affects marginalized or visible minority community members. I will reiterate that we need to invest in community-led change and programming. I suggest that the HRP and police agencies in general reassess their actual function in today's society, because from the outside, it sure looks like they largely exist to protect the interests of the wealthy, the elite, the people in charge, and their property, rather than the general public. I'd like to suggest that the HRP scale back what it does, reassess what community support and to serve and protect really means and who it is meant for, and make changes in the organization itself before continuing to ask for more and more and more money, while social services get cut left and right. Furthermore, as a small business owner who deals with theft on a regular basis, as well as the odd mental health crisis operating in the downtown core, the police are the last thing I or my staff would resort to ask for help, because I personally have no faith that the police will be able to respond to the needs of not only myself or my coworkers, but that they are wildly underqualified in dealing with folks who may be experiencing any type of crisis. Also, I know this isn't part of the specific budget, but of the fleet budget, and it has been brought up several times. But I'd like it to be known that I am also vehemently opposed to tax dollars or any dollars being spent on militarized armored vehicles for use by the police. This feels to me like it signifies only one thing, despite the claims by the HRP that may say otherwise, and that is that it'll be used against the people to quash protests.
30 seconds remaining.
Yep, to intimidate and effectively protect property, not people. I'm just going to close by saying that I really, truly hope the board considers what has been shared during this meeting and is able to take a step back in order to see that the community that you are also a part of is full of caring, loving, intelligent human beings that are fundamentally in a place of caring about one another. So please find yourself on the side of community and not fighting against it.
Wiebke, if I may, when you made the comment about the raison d'etre of the police force to protect the property only of the wealthy, when the police were rushing en masse to the parkade at the Halifax Shopping Centre to aid the Syrian refugee who was 16 years old, who ultimately died of his stab wounds, a trial for which is going on now, do you think they made an assessment that he was a wealthy person?
Well, I don't think that's what I meant by when that police protect property. That's a normal thing for the police to do, to rush to a scene where a child has been stabbed. What my point is, largely and overall, is that we are not dealing with the root cause of issues. Why are there kids with knives stabbing children in a mall parking lot? Why is that happening? You know, what social services are there for immigrant families dealing with this kind of stuff? You know, like, okay, that's like the police just doing literally its bare minimum job to respond to a stabbing of a youth in a mall parking lot.
Yeah, I thought you were saying that the problem with the police is that they were only reactionary. And I wanted to make sure that you and I were not too divergent on the issue, and I don't think that we are. So I appreciate your clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Speaker. Our next speaker is Frank Hempel, and I may have mispronounced that.
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Great. My name is Frank Hempel. I live in District 8, here today, again, to speak in opposition to any and all increases to the police budget. I think, yeah, as always, a lot of really brilliant community members have said a lot of really brilliant things, and have been increasingly silenced in saying those things through caveats like, don't talk about your personal experiences, don't talk about social justice. And yet that last speaker, like Gavin Giles, you're very quick to interject and be like, whoa, 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 what about this one situation? So I think we're not maybe in good terms on how we're communicating generally. And I think that is maybe the nature of these meetings, where it feels like you are going forward to tick a box and say, oh, we need to do a community consultation, but we're not going to take it seriously. And that's very evident based on what happened last year and in previous years. And it's very evident on how this is playing out this year. So I want to say I'm against it. Two big things going on here. One, I'm against increasing the budget at all. I think it is a terrible waste of money given the amount of crises that we are in. There is we don't have housing. We don't. 66% of Nova Scotians said that they were challenged in their housing this year alone, more than half. So we shouldn't be spending money on toys for cops when we have real immediate crises to deal with, like our crumbling healthcare system. And I know it's very easy to be like, that's not our budget, but it is all connected, right? Like all of these things are connected. If you don't have stable housing, if you are unhoused, you have more health issues. You are also more likely to engage with the police because you're seen as committing a crime. It is the policing of the unhoused. It is the policing of the poor. It feels very much like the police are looking to buy armored vehicles to continue their war against the working class and poor folks. Like it's a lot. And I think this is just, yeah, I had so many things to say, but I really feel like, Mr. Giles, like your last interjection of, whoa, whoa, what about this was very poignant for how these have been playing out. And it is extremely disrespectful.
Well, just for the record, sir, the speaker and I were agreeing with each other.
No, they were saying something important. You interjected because you thought they were something else, which is not good discourse.
But we agreed on the discourse, just saying.
We're arguing. I'm going to come back to it. I'm going to say, I don't think this is a good idea. And I know I'm having a strong reaction. And I know we all have strong reactions because we are people in community. And this is a personal thing. And I know it's very easy to go to your job and to say this is just work. And like the personal is personal and political is political. And it's like, guys, basics, like personal is political. And I'm not trying to attack you of character. I'm not trying to say like whatever, but it is hard to have a real meaningful discourse about these things when it feels like folks are not being listened to, when it feels like they are constantly being subjected to more and more rigorous standards for how they show up, right? So it's like, we're not supposed to wear masks unless it's for a medical reason. It's just like, it's not doing it for me. And there's a lot of people who said a lot of brilliant things, and I'm not one of them in this moment, because I'm saying this is not a great way to engage with the public. And it's very exhausting to constantly be the box that gets checked of, we did our public consultation. For what purpose? There was public consultation in 2020 where the public said, we don't want tanks in our city. We don't want militarized vehicles. We don't want this. That was listened to. And then somehow we ended up with 2 militarized vehicles because they came from a different budget line. And Isabel spoke to this saying, oh, it's very similar to like a child being like, I asked mom, she said no, I went to dad. But I feel like this is also very like similar to the patterns that happen in intimate partner violence of just like, you say, you're too reactionary, you're too emotional, you're too this, like your needs don't get listened to, it's not relevant. It is, yeah, it's gross. I'm sorry, this is less professional. It is what it is. I'm saying no. Other people are saying no. Is this the time that you're going to listen? But I'm asking you to take it on to yourselves as people, not people in a professional context, but people who live in Halifax, people with housing, people who have to access the healthcare system, people who buy groceries, people who have friends who have been impacted by violence. Like, let's see ourselves as people in community and not just say, well, this is the budget line and Robert's rules and all
30
these
seconds remaining.
Well, I'll end there. Have a great night. This has been swell.
Thank you. Campbell McClintock. Do we have Campbell McClintock with us?
Chair Giles, Campbell McClintock is not in the Zoom meeting. Staff has reached out to them, and unfortunately, they're not able to join. So please move to the next speaker on the list.
We'll move to Max Gregory.
Hi, can you hear me? It's not even sure.
Yes.
Okay, hi. I'm just gonna start by saying I'm joining from work, and I've been here since 8 a.m., so I'm not at my best. I also don't think you deserve my best, essentially considering this meeting started at 4 p.m. on a Wednesday. So anyway, first of all, the way that you've treated.
Could you please put your camera on rather than a photograph of some pigs?
It's not working.
Well, could you please take the photograph of the pigs down then?
Do you want me to put up a different background?
Well, I don't want you to put up a background of pigs.
Why?
Well, I'm not going to argue with you.
Can I continue? It's not.
A pig is a very discriminating and very insulting word to use against the backdrop of a police officer. And that's what we're doing. We're talking about a police budget.
I'm not familiar.
Well, I'm familiar.
I don't know how to change it.
Well, I suggest you figure out how to change it and then come back on at the end of the
I don't understand. Other people had backgrounds. I just have a background of pigs.
Well, you can select whatever background you want.
I don't know how to change it.
Well, I regard
should I turn my camera off?
I regard your choice of background as insulting, but you carry on.
Thank you. So first of all, what I find insulting is the way that you've treated the people in this meeting, telling people that they can't wear a mask. I am wearing a mask, by the way. Can't see it because my camera is not working, regardless. Not saying we can't wear a mask, saying we shouldn't get personal, saying that interrupting people and arguing with them, extremely unprofessional. We're supposed to be served by you, allegedly. You should want to hear what we have to say. Anyway, I also would just like to say I think this board as a whole is proving itself to be. Oh, okay. Someone figured out how to turn the camera off. That wasn't me. Anyway, I think it's extremely unprofessional. And this board is extremely illegitimate because you don't listen to the people and you just give the cops whatever they want. What is the point of this board acting as the go-between when you're just going to give them what they want? There is no point. I don't think that you're going to do anything but approve this budget, which I'd like to say on record I am completely against, but I don't think that you're going to do anything but approve this budget. So I don't know why this board exists. So I'm going to use the rest of my time to address the city because I'm going to use the platform you're providing, even though I don't think you're a legitimate board. So as for the armored tanks, I don't understand why we need weapons of war. War against who? The people, obviously. And this is being done with our tax dollars. The police are pretending to be on our side, to be like palatable. They're really working on their PR right now. But then why are they requesting weapons of war? Who is the war against? It can only be against us. I find it despicable. I don't think it should happen. Yeah, and we are watching the militarization of our city. This is how it starts. And the fact that the people told you no in 2021 and now, or 2020, I don't care. And now they slipped it through, completely unacceptable. I don't understand why we are allowing this to happen. I don't understand why you people have jobs. I don't understand any of it. I don't really know what else to say. Again, I didn't prepare because I didn't have time. Anyway, yeah, I find all of you despicable, especially you, Gavin Giles.
Thank you for your insights. Have a good evening. Eloise Brunet.
Chair Giles, Eloise Bernay is not in the Zoom meeting. Staff have reached out to them, but has not received a response. So please move to the next speaker.
Toby Green.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Toby Green. I live in District 8 and I'm here to express my strongest possible opposition to the proposed 25-26 police budget, as well as my objection of the use of external budget lines to purchase additional armored vehicles. I've attended every one of these meetings for several years, and I've only ever heard overwhelming community objection that's been repeated in most people's presentations, and then succeeded by board approval. And I'm here today to urge the board to take the time to listen. The city provides HRP with millions in additional funding each year, and this funding continues to prove that it does not protect us, nor does it prevent crime. Policing is reactionary, and this reactionary funding leads directly to the disabling of people in this community through police violence, regardless of whether or not they've committed the crime. The prioritization of this budget is both a contributor to rising experiences of trauma-induced disability locally and why we don't have the resources to support disabled people living in the city. As a power chair user, sorry to speak from my personal experience, I can say that through daily experience, we do not have adequate snow removal. We do not have functional sidewalks. We do not have functionally accessible transit, and we do not have accessible housing. We don't even have accessible public consultation meetings. New community members become disabled every day, not only at the hands of police, but as a result of this city's healthcare and housing crises. We can only see these as circumstances that are a cycle enabled by starving our community of resources that are being continuously given to our over-resourced police department. The 23-26 HRM public safety strategy states a goal is having community inform what safety means to them. And I believe community has provided in these consultations repeat, clear, brilliant, beautiful ideas about how to restructure resources for community safety. But because we're resisting additional policing, we are called, and I'm gonna quote this again, canned, banal, bizarre, nonsense, rubbish. But ex-officers are given plenty of space to justify weaponry from their lived experience. So why is it that we need $3.2 million increase to a force that hasn't proven to have any impact on the safety of this community? And why is it that requests for increases are repeatedly recommended despite overwhelming community objection? To say that any armored vehicle is an urgent occupational and health necessity for the HRP is an insult to the people living in the city who don't have access to basic necessities, healthcare, housing, food, clean drinking water. We don't have these things. At these meetings, we're not allowed to talk about violence against our houseless neighbors unless we're calling for it in protection of our precious rental properties. We're not allowed to talk about sex workers unless we're talking about raiding their places of work. We're not allowed to talk about drug users unless we're calling them names. And we're not allowed to talk about the anti-Blackness and anti-Indigeneity of local policing, period. People get silenced here. They get disrespected here repeatedly. But we keep showing up because we're pleading meeting after meeting that this is for our survival. Armored vehicles are not for your survival. These services are for our survival. There's a tangible opportunity here to say no and to move this money somewhere where it's actually needed. I'm urging the Board of Police Commissioners today to be much braver than they have been in the past and actually fulfill the role of bringing forward a recommendation that reflects the needs that are being clearly spelled out here by every single one of these meetings. Thank you. And for my last comment, I just want to say that these meetings have been conducted in a wildly inappropriate manner, and community members have been repeatedly interrupted, disrespected, and told that they have to engage in very specific ways that make it so people can't actually say how they feel about the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. Our final speaker is Rebecca Hartery.
And Chair Giles, our speaker from early in the meeting, and you can speak after Rebecca, and that is Okio Sue Gerler.
And do we want to hear from Rebecca Hartery first and then the other speaker?
It's up to you, Chair.
I think that's what we should do. The speaker is on camera already.
Hi, do I go now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how I'm supposed to follow Toby or any of my fellow community members that have demonstrated how much more capable and appropriate all of them are for any job that police have. I can't even say anything more than that. But I'd like to actually return right to the beginning of this meeting where Galvin Giles, you said, I want to, for the future, you really need to learn how to pronounce Mi'kma'ki and Mi'kmaq. You mispronounced their land. This is stolen land. Your job is pretty much illegitimate on their stolen land anyways, so the least you can do is—
Speaker, if you wish to speak about the police budget, feel free. If you wish to criticize me, there's an opportunity for you to do that, which is not now.
Okay, I'd like to reclaim back that time. But yes, I just want to say that moving forward, please get the pronunciation right. I'm also wearing a mask because you can't ask people not to wear a mask. I'm not going to put the guests in my home at risk from airborne diseases. I'd really like you to clarify why you would even ask that. And I'd also like to point out that, I had a bunch of notes, but sitting here and being one of the last speakers, I need to talk about how you all exist in the jobs that you're doing right now. At the beginning of this, and this does have to do with the budget, because it makes this process untrustworthy and ineffective. At the beginning of this, you said that all board members had to have on their cameras. When I was promoted to a speaker in this meeting, only 2 people had their cameras on. What is that
That's
about?
not accurate.
Yes, it is. I actually took a screenshot, but I'll send it. Yeah, so I just want to say we have one chance other than emailing you all throughout the year to talk about the budget. So I really do hope that you do listen to everybody that came before me and what I'm going to try to fit into this time. I would like to talk to Virginia Hinch, particularly because you're new. I hope you have learned from the hurt of all of the people that have been speaking that this board has done a lot of damage in this community. You responded to an email to a community group called Community Not Cops Chibuktuk, and some quotes that you said I found to be super important and made me be like, okay, cool. She's on the Board of Police Commissioners. Let's see how she handles this because our word means something. You said, I broadly support the movement to reallocate both funds and expected duties from police and into community members and other initiatives, organizations that help solve the underlying issues in our society, housing, mental health services, addictions, etc., instead of policing their outcomes. I have been witness to police destroying people's belongings that are living outside when that person is literally on their way to go pick that up. It is a tool of cruelty and oppression, and to make sure that people stay in line and to make sure that capital is being able to be collected. And that goes back to when Galvin Giles, you interrupted Vibka Kungal and said that you both agreed on it being reactionary, but you clearly don't understand what reactionary means. They adequately pointed out that we need services that would prevent the possibility of children having knives and stabbing each other in the first place. And it is incredibly disrespectful to use a child's death because the police did not save him. They were reacting to a child being stabbed because we have so many underfunded, supportive
things that take care of people and that know what's going on. So I just want to say that was like, I'm shaking because it's really messed up to use a child to try to advance your point and then not even know what you're talking about. You didn't agree.
You're here to speak to the police budget, which is something over which we have some influence. We do not have influence over social policy.
That is talking about bullets and guns and all this kind of stuff. What did that have to do?
30 seconds remaining.
Okay. Virginia, there is also other parts of that quote that you said that at the very least, we can't let thin reasoning be enough to make a vote, as it has often in the past, in increasing the police budget. You said that you would vote against the police budget if there was increases brought up. So I want to bring that to the public awareness. And I also want to say that all the pain here in these, like when people have their notifications off, is more communities than I can count, like more community members than I can count, connecting over how ineffective, harmful this is. And we are dreaming up new ways of community, and you're not doing any of this in silence. This is recorded. You do know that, right? So more and more people are paying attention. More and more people are learning your processes, and we will find more ways to interrupt them. And all of that has to do with the police budget, because I am so sick and tired of how exhausting this is, though we will never stop. To take money from everyone else. I'd rather fire trucks than tanks, and tanks is a weapon, and there is—
Your time is up. Could you please conclude?
I know. University, you can cut me off. Yeah, so no to the budget, and I'll see you at the HRM February 12th.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Okyusur Gürler, and I'm sure that I'm not pronouncing that correctly, and I apologize for that. Speaker, you're not on camera, but I think we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm just having some trouble with my camera. I have no idea why. I did check it before coming, but if I'm okay to speak like this, I would like to.
Yeah, we would prefer that you turn your camera on, but if you're having technical difficulties, Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Thank you.
I was not able to prepare a speech because I've been dealing with a medical emergency for the past 3 days, but I thought still it is very valuable for me to show up. Hence I'm late. I'm from District 5, and I'd like to speak in opposition to the budget increase for the following reasons. First of all, I don't think the Board of Police Commissioners, which is described as a civilian link between community and the police, is providing that critical lens in determining whether or not the HRP is using their funds properly, if HRP truly needs a budget increase, or seeking out any expert opinion on the matters that HRP deals with proactively. Rebecca just mentioned that there's only one public participation opportunity, so community also does not have much opportunity to come and speak to you directly like the HRP does at every meeting. Secondly, the HRP is looking to hire only non-uniform officers. They've described this as civilian. That's not a thing. Civilian police is not a thing. And they've talked about it as detasking. That shows a gross misunderstanding of what detasking is. From the HRP, and it seems like co-opting language more than anything. I'm disappointed that the BOPC did not call them out on it, which makes me think that also BOPC is lacking understanding of what detasking is. I understand that part of the funds are for mental health sports. It sounds like a wonderful program. I wish all city-funded employees had mental health sports for themselves and for their families. A lot of city employees deal with people all the time, and that must be taxing. And yeah, I think that should be supported, but do they need a budget increase for that? No. Like other city programs, HRP can look at what they're spending money on, what they're wasting money on, and fund that mental health program within the $97 or $96 million that they already have. I don't know if anybody has mentioned the civilian clothing budget lines or the incentives offered for retiring early. What a lovely program. I don't know why they get that, and I don't know if the librarians do not get the wages that they want, but also speaking of librarians, the police budget does not exist in a vacuum. There's other city-funded programs that provide frontline support to community, and they do it proactively. They offer a free space. The transit folk deal with people day to day. Firefighters deal with fire, and some of them are volunteer. Why not fund these programs proactively? Why go through their budget lines with a fine-tooth comb or like increase prices to public transit when we could be funding these more generously as well? Also, the police shows up when a 911 call happens. That doesn't mean that they're helping the situation. That doesn't mean that they're providing safety to the community. They just show up. So yes, the city is going to get more complex with increasing climate change events, more domestic violence, more higher population. There will be more calls to 911, likely, but this doesn't mean that they are there in a helpful manner. There's no critical lens coming from the Board of Police Commissioners or any third party looking at how the police deal with emergency situations. And I only have personal experiences to talk from because there's no critical lens, but my experiences show that they only make matters worse. I will not speak to that way more, but we can't just say, oh, there will be more calls, there will be more instances of domestic violence, so we should fund the HRP. They show up after an incident usually is done or in the middle of an incident. We need to be funding programs that are proactively getting ahead of these issues that show up in our community. And so many nonprofits and city-funded programs already do that. So we can be just putting money into already the organizations that are doing so much with such little money before we give HRP $100 million.
30 seconds
Also,
remaining.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds remaining.
Okay. Also, they were commended for the 3.3% increase being really little in terms of inflation. They have a $97 million budget that's already overinflated. We can't just look at that and be like 3.3% increase is so little and so great. Their budget is already overinflated, and we need to look at other budgets that have been approved in the past and be critical of those before we approve any more budget increases. Follow the funding report and please detask the police, and that doesn't mean hiring more non-uniform officers. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes the public presentation aspects of our meeting. Any speakers who are still on the line, we offer our thanks. Agenda item 11, added items. Are there any added items, Madam Clerk?
There are no added items, Chair.
There's no need for an in-camera section of the meeting. Agenda item 13, notices of motion. Are there any notices of motion? Commissioners, any notices of motion? Date of our next meeting, January 15th, 2025. Motion for adjournment, please. Commissioner Kent, thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Thank you.